Philip estimates that he could have mustered at least twice the number of men had this been his domain. If we had this much manpower, doesn't it make more sense for us to attack all at the same time? After all, we have around 200 men here. Though that would be a viable option too, it wouldn't be the crane wing formation. For it to be crane wing formation, Philip Kaka's soldiers must advance first with our forces covering the side flanks. Ah, so that's why. Right, that's why. He had managed to completely forget about it. Wayne let out an audible sigh. Since his face was completely covered, no one could see his current expression. I'm glad you could understand. Now then, which direction should we retreat to? Ah, yes. We'll retreat towards Igor Kaka's direction then. So towards the left flank, I understand. Then I'll request that you stick to the battle plan we had discussed before. Please also keep an eye out for archers. It's not so uncommon for horses to kill their riders in a stampede once they've been struck by arrows. As long as I have this armor, I'll be fine even if a horse stepped on me. This is a high-grade item that was crafted by a renowned blacksmith and enchanted by magic casters. Philip's armor set was a gift from Hilma. The armor had been enchanted with magic that boosted its defense, allowing it to outclass the armor set that had been passed down as a family heirloom in his house. Though he had received this gift quite a while back, he had never had the chance to try it out yet. This will be the armor's debut. That baron over there certainly did not have something of such high quality. Philip tried his hardest to stop his sense of superiority from showing up in his voice. Even so, it's best to err on the side of caution. Everything would be for naught if Kaka were to be killed in the fray. This is the truth. That's correct, because Philip Kaka is our general. Even if you're donned with such excellent armor, there are still weak points where an arrow could strike. In addition, no matter how durable the armor is, it cannot defend against most spells. Please do not let down your guard because of the armor. After all, Philip Kaka is our general. Their repeated warnings greatly annoyed Philip, but he understood where they were coming from. If a general were to be slain, then the battle would be over. That was common sense. Knowing that these two saw him as their leader, Philip couldn't help but smile. Of course, I understand. Also, where will Philip Kaka deploy our formations? It would be too dangerous to deploy on the road. I believe it would be best to stay back, that way we could rush to your aid if we have to retreat. It would help if you can tell us your position. Yumu. Philip was in agreement. When the general is in danger, it is the duty of his subordinates to rush to his aid. Though this was common sense, Philip was shocked that he wasn't the one to suggest this in the first place. I would have noticed these things if this was the usual me. Right now I'm just too excited. This is my first time organizing a battle of this scale. Philip gulped slightly and took a deep breath. What's wrong? Ah, nothing. I was just trying to temper the fiery passion for this battle in my heart. Oh, I see. Is that so? Then where would Philip Kaka like to wait for the caravan? First of all, Philip took a look to his left and right. The paved roads were quite wide, enough space for two carriages to pass through side by side. This road seemed to be a major source of income for Baron Delvin. There were lush forests to the sides of the road, but the closest spots to the road where bandits would usually hide had been cleared completely down to just grass. The forest was under human management, apparently to allow pigs to forage the grounds for acorns and the like, so there was no need for them to be on alert for monsters or wild beasts. If that's the case, we'll set up the ambush in the forest. I see. If that's the case, I know of a suitable spot. There's a patch of forest where twigs, weeds, and whatnot have already been cleared out, that could allow us to retreat on horseback. How do you feel about that? Such a place exists. Indeed. When Philip Kaka decided to launch the ambush in these lands, we knew something like that was necessary, so we took the time to prepare that spot. Philip had repeatedly chosen this patch of land for the ambush in their previous meetings. Though he had asked Wayne and Igor for their opinions, both of them deferred to Philip. It must have been quite troublesome for them to make preparations after that. Then I'm truly grateful to you. Nonsense, since you had to take on the risks of leading the first charge, what we did was just our fair share, right? It's just as Wayne Kaka had surmised. The two led Philip to the site and it was just as they had described. There shouldn't be an issue for horses to gallop if the grounds were in this condition. As he finished his discussion with the two, Philip simply walked back to his soldiers. Philip couldn't stop sweating because of his full-plate armor, and because they were on uneven ground, his helmet could cause him to lose his balance and fall over easily. Woo. Philip wheezed heavily as he took off his helmet to clip on below his waist. He took out a handkerchief and began to furiously wipe his forehead. Philip felt like the armor was a failure. Even though an armor's defensive capabilities are its most important quality, mobility is equally as important. He seems to remember that there were enchantments that lighten armor. He'll have to ask for one of those in the future. Or perhaps an enchantment that prevents him from sweating while he's wearing the armor. He should talk to Helma about this the next time he's in the capital. After making a mental note of that, he walked back to the site where he saw his soldiers bored out of their minds doing nothing. Sorry for the wait. Millard. Who is that man who's covered his face? His appearance screams bandit. Are we being set up? That's impossible. That man's obviously an esteemed noble of the kingdom. Speaking of appearance, don't mention it. It's not as though every nobleman could afford full plate armor. Plus, during the Battle of the Cat's Plains, those families that had lost their successors also lost many heirloom weapons and armor. Philip's household was in this exact situation. If he loses this set of armor, it would be difficult to acquire one again. Though it appears the soldiers do not believe in his reasoning, there was no need to force them to accept it. Okay. Let's wait till the caravan arrives. After it does, we'll attack it immediately. Philip heard no response and raised his voice. Do you understand? Understood. Though everybody answered begrudgingly, their voices in unison were still loud enough to be heard. Philip was unsatisfied with their response, but he'll have to leave it at that. This is their first battle after all. There was no need for them to meet all expectations. For them to develop into excellent soldiers, they will have to focus on the most immediate problems at hand. As Philip mulled over these thoughts, he sat on the ground as if his body was giving in to the desire for rest. A vast criminal syndicate known as the Eight Fingers lurked in the shadows of the kingdom. There existed 8 divisions within the syndicate, one of them being the smuggling division. Christopher Olsen, a member of said division, sported the face of an honest merchant. His words carried quite a bit of weight on the major trade route connecting the royal capital to the west side of the kingdom. As such, he had the first-hand experience of having his warehouses be looted clean of various types of goods during Jeldabiath's rampage. They had substantial losses, but it did not spell the end for his company. Still, a considerable amount of time was now necessary to recover those losses, so he found it to be a necessity to borrow a portion of the funds from the Eight Fingers. You've got to spend money to make money, that was how businesses operated. Of course, it could also lead to greater losses, but as long as he kept his head down and avoided unnecessary risks, there was not much to worry about. Borrowing money from Eight Fingers, however, would start one down the gradual path towards losing oneself. The Eight Fingers would force merchants who had made losses into criminal activities, such as smuggling, selling or transporting narcotics. Merchants fell into this trap quite often. So what about Christopher, who had already been ensnared? In order to borrow money, he had a meeting with the leaders of the divisions, which shocked him, to say the least. Christopher belonged to the smuggling division, so the management of loans should have been done by his superiors in the same division. Meetings with the executives of the other divisions should have been an impossibility. Despite all of this, he got to meet with the top brass. Was it because his accomplishments had earned him a high recommendation? Or was it some other reason unbeknownst to him? He couldn't figure out why even after the meeting had concluded. The only thing that he was certain of was his suspicions towards the division's leaders' unusually friendly attitude towards him, knowing full well how they were feared even by the dark side of society. Of course, goodwill from mafia heads could just as easily be faked as anything else. Another thing that caught his attention was the fact that they, befitting their status at the highest echelon of the organization, apparently took their own health quite seriously. While he wondered if they were perhaps a bit too skinny, they were definitely healthier compared to his overweight body. Such people of importance had given him a job on the spot. The kind of job to be given out depended on various factors, such as the amount of money borrowed, the value of the person as a human being, and whether that person could be of use to Eight Fingers in the future. Those with better ratings were given safer jobs, and vice versa. The job given to him was transportation of the Sorcerer's Kingdom's grain. Whether or not it's safe is still unclear. What's the matter? Did you say something, sir? Oh, don't mind me. I'm just mumbling to myself. The one to respond to his question was the leader of the mercenary division. He was a robust man. Very much different from Christopher, who was in his 40s and saved up a thick layer of fat around his waist. The man was young, sharp, and apparently only in his 20s. He wore a steel chest plate with chainmail underneath. A helmet that could cover his entire face sat next to him, together with a well-worn sword. The man was the leader in charge of protecting the Sorcerer's Kingdom's grain caravan, which consisted of 7 horse-drawn carriages and wagons. The security detail consisted of 24 people in total, all of which were employed by Eight Fingers, and like Christopher himself, belonged to the smuggling division. Though they were members of the same department, they still charged for their service, and at a rate higher than that of mercenaries of a similar level nonetheless. On the other hand, they no longer had to worry about information leakage for secret missions, as they were more loyal to the mission at hand. In the face of threats that couldn't be taken care of, regular mercenaries would probably just abandon the mission, but these men would fight as rear guards to their death. This was understandable, as abandoning the mission would cost the higher-ups their dignity. As a result, they would have been hunted down and murdered, even if they were to make it out alive. Therefore, for someone like Christopher who did not know of any trustworthy mercenaries, these men from the 8 Fingers were probably his best choice. But then again, for this mission, they were his only choice. It was a direct order from the higher-ups to use these men. To make up for the lack of options, they were to provide their services for free, and so he had surplus funds to hire even more mercenaries. However, hiring extra mercenaries would be seen as a sign of distrust towards the men. Never mind the fact that their employment was specified by the top brass, so hiring other mercenaries could be seen as him disobeying their orders. After giving it some thought, Christopher decided against hiring extra mercenaries. Moreover, all of the guards appeared to be quite capable, but of course, Christopher, who was no warrior, could not properly grasp their strength. That was not a problem, however, as the higher-ups have vouched for them by claiming that they were outstanding. Going against orders would be dangerous regardless of the reason. That being said, if he were to be asked whether he felt it was safe to depart with such a small detail, he would have wished for more capable men. It would have been great if he could borrow a boss from the security department, a member of the 6 Arms, the enforcement group of the 8 Fingers. Needless to say, that wish would never come true.